This is number 5 from your Target 4 proof packet work. I don't have the picture up here, but you can follow along in your own packet with the picture in front of you. Okay, so for number 5, I'm just going to start this proof by writing out my givens. So L is parallel to N, and J is parallel to K. And my reason is given. Alright, so for step 2, I'm just going to start making some observations here. Well, I'm trying to get to the fact that 2 and 4 are congruent, but I can't go across diagonally the diagram there because I have to look at 2 sets of 4 angles that are either right next to each other or on top of each other, kind of. So I either have to go from 2 to 1 or from 2 to 5 or from 2 to 3. So I'm going to go ahead and go from 2 to 5 here because I can see that 2 and 5 are corresponding angles. So I'm just going to make that observation. 2 and 5 are corresponding angles. And the reason for that, I just made that observation, so it's just the definition of corresponding angles. All right, and then step 3, I can make a conclusion because I know that relationship. I know that corresponding angles are congruent when we have parallel lines. So I can say that 2 is congruent to 5. And that's the corresponding angles theorem. That's my reason. And I can draw an arrow because I have an if-then statement, basically saying that if 2 and 5 are corresponding, then they are congruent. So then step 4, make a new observation now. I'm going to go ahead and move down to angle 4, so I can see a relationship between 5 and 4. They're both on the interior of the diagram. If you cover up the left side of the whole diagram and just kind of look at the right, and line N is our transversal there. And so I can see that 5 and 4 are both on the interior of that diagram, and they're on opposite sides of the transversal, so they are alternate interior angles. So I'm going to say that 5 and 4 are alternate interior angles. And I made that observation, so I'm just going to say that that's the definition of alternate interior angles. All right, and then I can make a conclusion about the relationship between those two. So if I know that 5 and 4 are alternate interior angles, then I know that they're congruent because there's a theorem that states that. So 5 is congruent to 4, and that's the alternate interior angles theorem. All right, and then I can draw another arrow between 4 and 5. Okay. Then step 6, my final step. I'm trying to say that 2 and 4 are congruent. Well, I have a couple congruency statements here, 2 and 5, and then 5 and 4. So I'm going to use my transitive property to tie it all together and say that angles 2 and 4 are congruent. And that's using my transitive property. That came from steps 3 and 5. And I'm done.